This week on A to Z Running, have you ever been especially frustrated about something only to have a well-meaning friend suggest that you be patient? It's probably not the most helpful advice, at least not at that moment, but when it comes to making our dreams come true as runners, there's reason to suggest it is both the first and most important advice to receive. Welcome back to A to Z Running, where we're helping runners thrive. I'm Zach, and just a reminder that you can learn more about our services and everything we do here at A to Z Running by visiting atozrunning.com. Be sure to follow us on YouTube and Spotify, where we post most of our content. Among others, we do have an Instagram presence, however limited it may be, being social media such as it is. The Monaco Diamond League meet was a spectacular success, as hoped. And don't forget about our AI trivia segments that we are doing. We'll have to skip today because, as you can see, there's no Andy with us yet today, but that's been a big hit, and I'm only 1 point away from a score of 10, which means a potential consequence for the loser, in this case Andy. If she scores 3 more points, however, first, she will beat me, and then it'll be lots of fun. So we've got all of that certainly coming later in the show, so be sure to stick around. Before we talk about how to make your dreams come true, which is the topic of today's show, and in fact, the start of a series we're going to be sharing, I ran a mile about a week ago on a track, a race. I didn't just run a mile on a track. I ran in a race. They call it the Magic of the Mile. We'll be sharing a number of our A to Z runners also participated in this event. It's a lot of fun. I got trounced in the most spectacular fashion. It was awesome. So you've heard Zach. You've heard me talk about the things I enjoy about racing and competing. And one of the things that I love the most, and it's more nostalgia than current reality, is just the unpredictability of track racing. You're on the track, and it feels like the difference between track racing and road racing is track is so much more intimate. Like the crowd is right there the whole time. They're watching you the whole time. It doesn't ever feel like there's any major, like the races are shorter, and so it's done faster, and runners tend to be like much closer together because you all want to be as close to the inside lane as possible. You are running a shorter distance, literally, if you are in the inside lane. And so it's tighter together, and there's a lot of jostling for position, for frustration. I don't know, there's a lot of contact, and so it just feels like a greater sense of urgency, and the competitive fires inside me just burn so much brighter in a track race. Again, it may be mostly nostalgia. I don't run track races hardly at all, but once a year at least at this Magic of the Mile event that they do near our home, in fact. It is a phenomenal deal. I've heard of many other places that do similar kinds of events that are like open to the public track meets or track races. The Wisco Mile is one that's come up. We've had some athletes doing that in the past. And so wherever you are, if you have the opportunity, it's spectacular. It's lots of fun. So back to my race. I ran. I had the intention setting out on the race. I even said this to one of our one of the competitors who's also one of our athletes. And also happens to be a friend of mine. And so we're talking about it ahead of time, and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to lead this race. I'm going to sit back a bit. I want to be comfortable in the pack and just kind of see how it unfolds. I was not confident in my ability to run an all-out mile faster than anybody else in the field on this day, in part because I wasn't confident in my ability to run an all-out mile and be able to finish the race well. But also, it certainly is a competitive group that we've got going on here locally. And at the same time, I, over the years, have often just done the same thing in this race, which is kind of go to the front. And I prefer to be out of traffic, out of harm's way, but you don't know what's happening when you're in front of everyone else, and so you have this kind of general sense of unknown the entire time, and it's disconcerting. There are times when I prefer that, there are times when I don't, and this was one of those days when I was really just not wanting to do that. Well, What do you think happened? When the race started, it's only a mile. It's 4 laps on the track plus 9 meters. And so the race starts, and I deliberately started further to the outside. It's a waterfall start. You're not in lanes. You're all just in a straight line that curves gently across the track. That didn't make any sense, did it? Straight line that curves gently. But you're in a line that curves across the track, and you are going to cut in right away as soon as the gun starts, as long as you're not inhibiting other runners. So it's better in that situation to be out of traffic. You start further to the outside, and then you kind of just work your way toward the inside, and you can see everybody more easily. You kind of know what's going on. Starting on the inside in a waterfall start can be hazardous, and so I'd prefer not to. In this instance especially, because I didn't want to have to go to the front to stay out of traffic. I wanted to be able to settle in. So the race goes out, and my man CJ, one of our athletes, is leading the charge off the line, and no one's really terribly eager to like gun it from the beginning, which was a surprise. I always think in a race like this, someone's just going to really take off and go hard. And nobody did right away. Everyone kind of was just waiting to see how it unfolded. So I found myself shoulder to shoulder with CJ, and he's in lane 1 and I'm in lane 2, and we're in front. And I'm thinking to myself, if no one goes and speeds this up, I am going to need to do that, even though I didn't want to. And there's a simple reason, because while I wasn't confident in my ability to run an all-out mile and finish well, I was confident that if it wasn't fast enough, there's no way I was going to win this race, because I could not outkick some of these speedy people in the finish. And so you know how the mile goes, right? Everyone thinks that they have the fastest kick in a mile, which is not true in these kinds of scenarios, but in the professional scene always. I definitely don't have the fastest kick in most of these situations, and so I didn't want to leave it up to that. So I went to the front, and I thought, okay, pulling an audible, because in a race you have to be able to make decisions in the moment, and you have to be willing to make decisions that you didn't initially prepare for, if that is the best possible decision. I'm not sure if that was the best possible decision for me, but I did it anyway, because I thought at this moment in time, with what I know, I can run significantly harder than I am at this moment and be in my comfort zone still, and that might help thin the field a bit so I don't have to try to outkick quite as many people. That's the thought going on in my head. Well, it worked out well until 500 meters to go. So you know how this goes. In a race on a track, the last lap is the key. Everyone is waiting for the last lap. It's like save your energy for that moment. Everyone's feeling, the stress and strain of running hard, and so no one wants to do anything too crazy until you feel like this is it, and the last lap always feels like this is it. It's actually a fascinating thing to study. In an indoor short track, which is a 200-meter track, and an outdoor track, which is 400 meters, it's the same mindset. And so even though it's the same distance to run 1 lap outdoors as it is to run 2 laps indoors, indoor races often still wait till the last lap, which is only 200 meters, to really kick it into high gear. It's an interesting thing. Anyway, here's what happened. I did not get a chance to rally a good, strong last lap and do so in the way that I was planning, because 100 meters earlier than that, with 500 meters to go, Ben Hardy did the bold thing. He was savvy. This was a race strategy like no other. He moved at 500 meters to go, and he just took off. It wasn't a subtle move. He didn't just kind of start to accelerate a bit. He took off. And that was exactly the right thing to do at exactly the right time to totally disrupt my thinking and totally catch me off guard. And he did. And he did it spectacularly, as I have said. And so it was awesome. I loved it. And then it was all chase. I had to try to chase him down. He gapped me right away. I was so unaware that it took me a moment to even react. And so I reacted, but it was a very poor reaction. It was half-hearted because I wasn't sure, can I really accelerate right now? Should I? Maybe I'll wait a little bit. Maybe he won't hold this move. But it's like, no, you have to get contact. As soon as you lose contact, it is so much harder to get it back, unless you're the greatest kicker on earth like Niels Laros, which I'm not. So I tried a little late to respond to his move, and I think I held close to him for the next 300 meters, but I certainly was still losing ground, if not, I was not gaining ground by any means. Final 200 meters, I thought, okay, I don't feel great now. I don't feel like I have much left, but I have to try at least. I have to try. And he was thinking probably the same thing because he just kept going. And I think I may have started to reel some of that distance in like the last 50 meters, but by then he already had the race won. And so it didn't particularly matter. So it was just a really exciting time. I loved it. I loved the race. I love the fire, the strategy, the having to think on your feet and react to others' moves. I didn't love the fact that I ended up second, but that's actually just part of the game, and it sometimes makes it that much better as it goes. So, shout out to Ben. Great race. Awesome. Masterfully done. Our kids also ran. Our two boys ran, and they both ran mile personal best times, which is always exciting. The only other time they've run a timed mile was last year at this same event, and so they both improved. They're young, and so as long as they're growing, they're probably going to be improving at this age. But it was fun to see them excited about continuing to improve in their running. So now that we have shared an inordinate amount of detail around that race, let's talk about patience. Some years ago, we spoke with you all, our audience, about our rules for realizing your dreams. And I understand that is a very, I don't know what the right word is, but the name of that topic is clickbait to the extreme, right? But there's a reason why we decided to label these things the rules for realizing your dreams. As it were, the self-help industry is exceptional. If you're not already familiar with these statistics, let me give you some numbers. It's generally believed to be self-help books. About 15,000 new self-help books are published every year, which is insane. That's a lot of writing on one genre. The industry on the whole may be worth upwards of $14 billion at this point in time. And you think about that, 15,000 books a year, $14 billion. That means most of those books aren't making any money, by the way. But some of them are making a lot of money. And this is especially notable because it's up from around $1 billion industry only 12 years ago. So, think about the numbers there. More than $1 billion a year in accelerated growth here. That's incredible. Now, why? As a genre, self-help has been around as long as wisdom has been shared between humans. I mean, think Bible, Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is a self-help book. Fundamentally, like that's the concept of this kind of genre. And there's ancient proverbs in every culture, in every society, that dating back to as long as things have been shared and recorded between those societies. So, not a new concept. And that tells you a fair bit of what we need to know right there. It's timeless. But why, especially now, we can see the industry accelerating so significantly. Why is that? Well, I think, and I'm not the only one who thinks this is not an original opinion, but you'll see a lot of different speculation, and a lot of it revolves around this idea that we are thoroughly dissatisfied with ourselves or our society or our situation. And when we find ourselves dissatisfied, we gravitate toward external encouragement and inspiration, which is altogether a wonderful thing. We are social creatures, humans, and we live best when we live well with other humans. And so the self-help books are kind of a vehicle for moving us in that direction. I think that you can read too much into these kinds of considerations. Like, are we less content now than we have been in the past, and that's why we're buying more of these books or writing more of these books? Or is it a chicken and egg thing, right? Or people writing more of these books because they're realizing more and more how much they're selling compared to other genres? Or is it just the idea that social media has made us more inclined to, like, we see someone posting things that we like, and then we find out they wrote a book and we want to buy it. And so, again, chicken and egg thing. They tell social media people, you should write a book. You have publishers go to influencers and say, write us a book, because we know that it will sell, because you have 1 million followers on TikTok or something. Do people have millions of followers on TikTok? I really don't know enough about these things to speak intelligently, but I know that that's something that's true. So Actually, what a publisher will do these days, if most of the time, if an author wants to go to a publisher and say, I have this idea for a book, it doesn't even matter the genre anymore. I have this idea for the book. The publisher will, somewhere in the conversation, say, what's your social media following like? What's your internet presence like? Because that matters. If you have a strong social media presence, you're going to be able to sell books more easily than someone who doesn't. And the publisher wants that because that's how they make their money. So here we find ourselves, sharing our self-help ideas with you. And that could be, I could go lots of directions with this. I think the place I'm going to settle currently is that that's okay. It is okay for this industry to be so overly saturated, because it gives us a chance to say, I don't want the ideas about this thing or from this source, and I do want the ideas about this thing or from this source, and that's fine. How many of the self-help books in that 15,000 every year are specifically geared toward runners, for instance? And the answer is many, but not as many as businesses or something like that. So that's where we find ourselves today, is like, well, we can just put together our ideas and say, these are the things that we think are going to make the biggest difference for a runner. And they're not complicated. That's the best part about things in this genre, is they're more like reminders of the things we already know, but they're packaged in a way that help us digest them better. So we're going to bring these ideas to you over the course of the next several podcast episodes, in order to do exactly that, to help you chew on and digest some of the most important things. And I should mention, now's a great time to say so. We are going to return to a familiar format where we share with you a topic and some of the latest running news. We're going to share with you the topic first, as we're doing right now, because we feel that that is a chance for those who may be listening to this after months or weeks after it aired. You don't have to listen to old running news before you hear some helpful information for a runner. But also, we want to throw that running news stuff in there too, because it's just so exciting and we love to share it. Well, let's talk about our rules for realizing your dreams. If you've been with us for a number of years, you may say, oh, that sounds familiar, because we did share this in a very cursory manner some years ago. It was the early stages of our thinking around these areas. And now these things have developed substantially. We have much more to say about them, and we have much more to include as it pertains to the experience of a runner within these things. And so we wanted to bring it back. And also with the understanding that this is content that we are packaging and intending to share in a potentially in a published format and other things. So here we go. The rules are categorized as 9, but in groups of 3. And that's a wonderful thing. 3 groups of 3 is so appealing. Those of you who are satisfied by numbers that are appealing. Okay, 3 groups of 3. There are 3 things to be, 3 things to get, and 3 things to stop. In our opinion, these are some of the most important considerations for runners in order to be successful, to realize your dreams, in other words, to be successful. And we feel the best part about this is that it does not matter what your goal may be. It does not matter what particular end you are aspiring toward. If that end includes the pursuit of running in some sense, then these things are going to make a difference for you. So what are the 3 things to be? Patient, consistent, and balanced. And those, you must be patient, consistent, and balanced to truly find the level of success you're looking for in running. What are the 3 things to get? Get help, get vision, and get knowledge. Those are very clunky verbs, but it works best. Get help, get vision, and get knowledge. And what are the 3 things to stop? Stop shortcuts, stop compromise, and stop doubt. And somewhere in there, I should probably just throw the phrase, stop using a watch. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so that's the 9 in 3 groups of 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with 1. And maybe in the coming weeks, we may share more than 1 at a time. We may share 1 at a time, depending on the degree of content we want to share on the topic. So we're going to start with the first, and there's a reason why it's the first, because it's the most important, and it's the thing that unlocks all the rest. The first thing you need to be in order to realize your dreams is patient. This is it. Why? because everything takes time. And that's obvious. This is like I said, most of this kind of stuff is sharing with you something you already know, just packaged in a way that's helpful to digest. So this is what we're going to package this patient for you. We're going to talk about why it is so difficult to be patient and the traps that we run into as runners, the difficulty we have with patience. We're going to talk about the connection between patience and imagination. It is a phenomenal intersection. It's going to make great sense. And we're going to talk about what patience should look like as runners in particular, and ultimately, how can we be successful here? How can patience help us realize our dreams? And what does that need to be? All right. We also have a definition of patience that I think is the best definition to date that we have conjured. It's wonderful. So why is it so hard to be patient? Let's start there. Most of human society is oriented around immediate gratification. Like our survival instincts are oriented around immediate gratification. The natural selection process, as Darwin would like to describe it. But also, even beyond that, it's clear that our brains are wired in such a way to appeal. So when something is good, we feel it immediately, right? Like when something's appealing, desirable, we feel it immediately. It's not something that it's desirable and then an hour later, oh, I feel good. Like it's right away. We should not condemn that necessarily, but that does make it really hard to be patient when there's something desirable immediately that we could have, but it's not the thing we should have. One of the most uniquely human characteristics we possess is, in fact, our ability to suspend instant gratification or delay gratification. That's why they call it delayed gratification. And that is important. It is one of the most uniquely human characteristics we possess because animals without the capacity to consider the future can't suspend gratification. Now, you can say all you want that you can train a mouse, you can train a dog, you can train a monkey to reject an instant gratification for a future gratification, but that is conditioning. You have built into that creature that capacity. It doesn't just do it naturally on its own. Like if a dog has something in front of it that it wants and there's no other thing that has influenced that, it's just going to take the thing it wants. It's just going to do it. Now, you can condition creatures, especially the more intelligent ones, to reject instant gratification. But this also appears with children, right? Children fundamentally are more instinctual than they are deliberate and thoughtful. And I mean children like the youngest, babies and early stages of youngsters. So what we find is that as we develop in our sentience around wisdom, we start to develop the capacity for suspending gratification. And that is important because it makes us better humans when we can make decisions not based on immediate gratification, but on future and delayed gratification. It reminds me, by the way, and I mentioned the connection to imagination, various commentaries on the topic of imagination. Let's talk about C.S. Lewis for a moment. I have thoroughly enjoyed his writings on this very term because C.S. Lewis is one who felt that imagination was an imperative for living best in the world, in human society. And so in one of his books, Mere Christianity, in fact, he specifically defined imagination as the organ of meaning. And his implication here is that it's imagination that allows us to understand things. And so and I can't remember what it was, but there's another one that's the organ of like truth or facts. Like it just if it's factual or not, if you can know it. But imagination is the thing that helps me make meaning out of it. Like I can understand it. And without imagination, we can only just know facts. With imagination, we can grasp their concepts, grasp their meaning, and do something with that meaning. We're going to come back to that. So the next one then is Sir Ken Robinson, who's written a lot about education. He's known best for his work around the topic of creativity in education. And Sir Ken Robinson talks about imagination. he defines it as the ability to, there's two layers here, visit the past. It's like multiple possible pasts, he would describe it as. Like you can go back and you can think about the past and relive it, and predict the future, multiple possible futures, where you can anticipate, you can actually imagine a future and live in that future in your head. And then he does this awesome illustration where we go back to dogs, right? He talks about the dog. If you go out to the garden with your child, he would say, this is a Sir Ken Robinson quote, paraphrase I should say, and you point at the moon, your child will generally look at the moon where you're pointing. But if you go out to the garden with your dog and you point to the moon, your dog's going to look at your finger. Like, what your finger? What's your finger doing right now? That's the capacity we're describing. And what this means for us right now is that this is actually an imperative to understand better patience. Here's the connection. My definition of patience. Are you ready? Patience is the willingness to accept a current undesirable state while working actively toward a future more desirable state. That's your clip of the day. Patience is the willingness to accept a current undesirable state while working actively toward a future more desirable state. So acceptance without working toward change, just accepting a current undesirable state, well, that's resignation. That's just, I'm just stuck in this thing I don't enjoy. Working toward change without acceptance is desperation. It's like I'm trying to do something because the current situation is so bad, but I'm not accepting. Like I'm in a kind of state of franticness, urgency, desperation. Neither of those are thriving states of existence, I would argue. And so when we can have both, when we can accept a current undesirable state while we're working actively toward a future more desirable state, what we're doing then at that point is we are saying, this thing is what it is. And because of that, I am moving towards something better and with deliberate intent. So patience, therefore, in my opinion, is impossible without imagination. Through imagination, we can envision a future different than the present. Through imagination, we can recognize why our past activities resulted in our current situation. And through imagination, we can understand how our current activities might help produce that future that we desire. So that's the connection here. My patience as a process is a process of imagining what brought me to today, what might be possible tomorrow, and what I can do right now to help make that possible tomorrow. How's that for a description of patience? Which brings us to then the fact that this is the key. In our opinion, this is the key that unlocks the potential for success as a runner, and life in general probably, but as a runner, this is the most important rule to realizing our dreams. We have to be patient. Okay, that's the context. Now let's talk about why this is so difficult in detail. We have three key categories here that we need to remember that are very important. The first is impulse control. I was talking about that earlier. Instant gratification. Something sounds good in the moment, right? And impulse control is a very difficult thing. Most common for runners is I'm feeling good, so I'm going to blank. I'm going to run harder, run longer. I'm going to do this workout with this running group because I'm feeling good or because someone asked me to, and this is the thing in the moment that is attractive to me. So I'm going to do it. The problem is that this decision is rarely made deliberately with a thought toward my bigger picture goal. Now, I say rarely, but actually it could actually be part of my bigger picture goal, because maybe my bigger picture goal is to just enjoy being healthy and running hard when I want to and not when I don't want to, and running with my friends when I can, and that's my big picture goal. Then that is actually the exact thing I should do. And so I'm speaking more along the lines of, if there is something immediately appealing to us, oftentimes what we do as runners is we say, that's like, I feel good today, so I'm just going to do this thing, even though that might not be the best thing for my intended progress. Part of the challenge is the understanding part of imagination. So I just don't always know exactly what makes the most sense in terms of moving me toward my future goal. Like, would it be a good idea to do this today or not? And I'm not really sure. Don't always know whether something would help or whether something would hinder. And the reality is that, as stated, these impulses are not always a bad thing. And many of them could be in line with my goals. And that's fine then if they are. But the principal point I want to make is that we don't usually make the decision based on what am I trying to do here? What are my goals? We usually make it more in a moment's appeal. So that's one category. I think that is the least destructive category in terms of the challenges with patience. The next two are worse. First is mismatch theory. You've heard us talk about this extensively if you've been listening to the AtoZrunning podcast, because mismatch theory is an important consideration for why we often struggle with the mental game in competition. But it also explains other things here. So mismatch theory is I expect something to be happening, it's not, and so it messes with my motivation. Like, this should be the outcome that I'm seeing right now, and I'm seeing something different. And so now I am struggling because of that gap. That's not good. It's often produced by a deference to unreliable metrics. So, like, I think that this pace is what I should be doing, which is an unreliable metric, because pace is an unreliable metric generally. And so when I'm not seeing that pace, I think something about it, good or bad, and that changes the way I think about I'm perceiving myself and my efficaciousness, my success. And that's not good, because I'm allowing data that are not supposed to be informative. They're not supposed to be prescriptive. They're supposed to be descriptive data, but I'm making them prescriptive. Like, this should be happening because of these things I want, and if it's not, it's a problem for me. Also often produced by unrealistic expectation. Like, I think that I should be doing this thing, but I don't actually know if that's true, if that's the thing I should be doing. And I think I should be doing it because I want to be doing it, not because I actually should be. That's just what I want, and so therefore I have set that as the thing I should. And that's a problem. Many times that's a problem. It becomes harder to be patient when I have a poor understanding of the connection between my current actions and my future goals. When I don't understand that clearly, patience is even more difficult. This, by the way, will come up later when we talk about the get knowledge rule down the road here too. Okay, category 3 for things that make patience difficult is the urgency trap. You've heard us mention this, but this is a lot more of a familiar term in the business and self-help world, popularized especially by Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits work of the Franklin Covey group. Actually was introduced in its current form probably by Dwight D. Eisenhower, like the president. He has what is called the urgency importance. Actually, it's not what it's called. It's the Eisenhower matrix, essentially. But it is an urgency importance matrix. We'll explain that. Here's what the urgency trap is. It is the idea that a higher emphasis is placed on things we perceive as urgent rather than things that are truly important. And so I feel like something is urgent or immediate, and so I weight that more heavily, like this is more important, when in reality that's actually not an important thing. It's not truly important. So what Eisenhower said is we need to make decisions based on we have the urgency importance matrix here, where things that are really urgent but not important, we don't do. And things that are really important and urgent, we do first. Things that are really important and not urgent, we do next. And so things like that, right? There's kind of some layers to it. I oversimplified it. A seriously close relationship between urgency trap and what they call hurry sickness, which is something that has been coming up more and more lately. Hurry sickness is the perceived need to hurry through life, like a general sense of being rushed and stressed. Like, I got to get through something. I got to do more. I got to finish quickly. And yet there's no actual reason to, except that I just feel like it. And so that's not healthy either. It reminds me of a character in Lemony Snicket's Series of Unfortunate Events. Are you familiar with those books? Or shows, or, there's a number of different ways you can consume them, but the books are the original form. And we are currently, as it were, by the way, we are reading them to our children as our nightly. We always read a chapter book every night, and not the whole book every night, but a chapter from a chapter book every night. We've read all the greats, all the classics, right? Lord of the Rings, The Chronicles of Narnia, Aragon. We're working through Harry Potter soon, so all the classics. Right now we're on the Series of Unfortunate Events, and book 11. Yeah, it's a 13-book series, so sit down in a while if you're going to read them. Book 11 has a character whose name is Captain Wittershins, and his personal philosophy that he constantly repeats over and over is, he who hesitates is lost. And he's the classic hurry sickness character. He's an archetype. All of Lemony Snicket's characters are archetypes. It's wonderful. And so he is the type of the always rushing, hurrying, gotta get it done now type of thing. And it feels stressful when you're listening to or reading the dialogue of this character. It feels stressful, and it is stressful. It's actually kind of hard to read because it's so rushed. So anyways, the point is, this is super unhealthy. As a matter of fact, the cortisol levels in someone in a state of rushedness are significantly higher than they should be, which is not healthy. The urgency trap makes me do a whole lot less of the important things and a whole lot more of the not important things, because I just feel like I need to do them right now. And then the urgency trap also makes me tend to feel even more urgency, because I know the important things aren't getting done, kind of in some part of my mind, but I'm still just not doing them because they're not as urgent. And then it gets to a point where it's like an emergency, and that's really not pleasant. Don't be there. Don't live there if you can help it. But we do this all the time as runners. Other people are doing blank workouts, and I feel like I need to be doing those workouts, because it's like, oh man, we're all training for the same race, and they're doing that stuff. I got to be doing that stuff, and I need to do it now because I'm running out of time. Or I'm not running hard enough right now, and I'm missing out on fitness. If I need to be training harder so that I get more fit. My race is coming up and I haven't been training enough, so I need to go after it immediately. What was I thinking all of these weeks? Now I got to really just go. I got to go hard right now. Or how about I need to run longer because I'm racing a marathon and I'm not running long enough long runs. These are all parts of the urgency trap, where we feel a higher sense of urgency, and so those are the things we prioritize, when really the important things are being neglected. The most obvious error here is that doing something at the wrong time, or in isolated instances, I need to do that workout with my friend because, I haven't been doing hard workouts lately and I need to get fit. Isolated instance. I just did that one workout with a friend. They don't do anything for you. They don't make hardly any difference on your progress, your physiological adaptations at a minimum. So doing things at the wrong time can often be harmful, but at the very least is not as effective. And then doing things in isolation is rarely ever doing anything significant for us. So instead, what does patience look like? How can we bring this all together and say, this is what we need to be, this is what we need to do as runners to apply patience well? Being content with current fitness, even when it doesn't seem like what I hope or desire. This is just the way it is right now. You can't change that right now. You can't do anything about it in the next 10 minutes or even in the next day. I was about to say 10 days, but actually 10 days is about enough time to start seeing physiological adaptation. So that we have to be content with the current moment and say, this is the acceptance part of patience. I am not where I want to be right now. And so I have to just accept that. I can't let that inform an unrealistic sense of urgency. But also, I need to then be working actively toward next steps. So trust is important here as an additional element in understanding patience, because I need to trust that the things I'm doing will, in fact, produce the desired results. And there's a bit of knowledge gap that's necessary there. I need to know what actually is effective and is going to help me. And if I do know that, or if someone else knows that who's helping me, then I need to trust that it's going to actually get me there. because it's not gonna be obvious tomorrow. It doesn't happen that quickly. I also need to trust that rejecting some appealing option today will benefit me further in the future. If I don't do this right now, it will help me later because of some good and wise reason. And so I need to be able to trust both of those things. So this is why physiology takes significant amount of time to develop, weeks, months, and even years to adapt fully. And that can feel discouraging. We don't see quick progress as runners. And especially if we're coming off of a period of time where there's been some significant disruption, illnesses, injuries, things like that, especially if the longer they are, the longer it takes to notice the kind of progress we hope to see. A lot of times what we think is progress is not necessarily like measurable progress. We're just feeling better about our situation, and that can make us feel like we're making progress too. But either way, it does take time. Think about things like systems for a moment, and like tissues in your body. Muscles adapt quite quickly, but even then it's only 2 to 4 weeks at earliest before you're really noticing positive adaptations in muscular development. Things like maximum muscle contraction, things like muscular endurance. Mitochondria in your cells at the cellular level adapt in different kinds of ways, proliferation, density, etc. And some of those can begin right away, like days to weeks, but you're not going to notice an immediate benefit from that without a significant amount of adaptation. And so it's like they'll begin to adapt, and so you're moving in the right direction, but you're not noticing it yet. And so if you're not patient, you might do something to disrupt that progress you're already experiencing. But then there's other aspects like density and mitochondria capacity that takes months to develop. And that's not to say that the things you're doing today aren't progressing, but you're not going to really notice any of those benefits until further down the line. How about bone remodeling? So that's a big one here. Bone remodeling is always happening constantly. Any kind of stress on your skeletal system is causing some adaptation, and bone remodeling is just the adaptation of the bones. And so when it's more significant, that's actually a problem. That's like injury or, it's like stress. Too much stress to bones is not a good thing, right? But the right amount of stress or some amount of stress helps with those adaptations. And because it's happening in small ways constantly, it takes time for that to really matter significantly. For me to get a stronger structure, structural strength is not just like a 2 or 3 week thing. Same deal with circulatory system, same deal with neuromuscular interactivity and some of those things. There's all of it takes time. So now we got to remember the urgency trap error, because the opposite of the urgency trap is prioritizing the truly important things. And this means that I need to know what is truly important right now and be sure to prioritize it over the wanton thrills, the exciting workouts, all those things. So I look at what I'm doing today and I'm saying, a good example of this is what Lydiard used to often say. The most important thing that I do today is not jeopardize tomorrow's workout. Like that, the most important thing I do today is make sure that I can also do tomorrow. That is actually that's a good way to like give yourself a buzzword, or rather a motto, a mantra. That's what I'm looking for. Give yourself a mantra here. The most important thing I do today is not jeopardize tomorrow's workout. And you could actually say it better. You could say the most important thing I do today is not jeopardize tomorrow's adaptations, because every day moves me in the right direction when I am not overdoing it. And so that's why you get Barry McGee saying it's better to go too easy than it is to go too hard. That's not exactly the way he put it, but that's the way we say it now, inspired by Barry McGee. That's why you get all of this commentary around get the effort right, because when you get the effort right, then it means you are able to adapt from that exertion, and you're able to adapt from yesterday's exertion, tomorrow's exertion, next week's, things like that. It also means I have to give my body time to adapt to the current stimulus. And so, you can't just will the body into faster adaptations. You can't just say, I need to get fitter, and then somehow doing something can accelerate that. There are some illegal ways to accelerate that, and legal ones too, in a insignificant sense. Nutritionally, you can definitely do yourself some favors, and you can do yourself some harm. Hate to say it, people, alcohol delays adaptations in your physiology. It just does. And so if you want to drink alcohol every evening with your dinner, that may actually be part of what's slowing down your adaptations. Now, quantities do matter there. I'm not trying to rail against one particular thing here over others, because that's only one example of many. Another example, by the way, is just not enough micronutrients. If you're just not eating nutrient-rich foods, or too much of foods that are not nutrient-rich, then you can't adapt as quickly because your body needs certain things to adapt well. So, and on the flip side, I guess you could say of the same thing is if your diet is too tight and you're not getting enough calorie dense foods, in the same token. So all of that is to suggest what of our later principles when we talk about being balanced. We'll get to that more thoroughly, but all of that is to suggest that I need to be patient in the sense that my body is adapting if I am doing quality work, quality training. It is adapting, but I'm probably not seeing the benefits of it today, and probably not tomorrow, but maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in a month, certainly in 6 months, and that's fair and reasonable. Okay, remember the mismatch theory. Let's wrap it up here with these other two. The mismatch theory error. Don't create expectations around unpredictable factors. So we don't actually know that training like X will produce Y results. You get this from Runner's World training plans. And I'm not trying to call out Runner's World specifically, but they do it for all their training plans. So I'm going to in this instance. They say this is the training plan for a 3:15 marathon. How can they know that? Well, reasonable assumption, right? Suggests that most people who train like this are probably going to be able to run a 3:15 marathon. But that is a big probably, and it is by no means a promise they're actually trying to make. They're just simply using that as a way to get you to buy their training plans. Like, which is the plan that's right for me? Well, here's one way to package it. I happen to believe that is a terrible way to package it because I think it's a false promise. But either way, even if that's not the case, that's not how training works. Training like X does not produce Y results for every person who trains like X. So instead, what I have to do is I have to say, be content with my current, right? What's my current situation? What are the things I need to be doing today that can move me toward my future goals? And I don't know exactly how long it's going to take. I don't know if adjustments along the way are going to be necessary at the outset, but I need to stop assuming all those things. And a big piece of that is the watch. Stop letting your watch rule your heart, like make you feel a certain way about your running. That is a tragedy that we are seeing all over the place with running. Is like, I felt really good about that run until I looked at my watch. And my question to you is, why should the watch change the way you felt about that run? Well, because it was slower than I wanted to be, or that I thought I was. You know what? If you never looked at the watch, you would have felt good about that run the whole time. Isn't that a wonderful thing? If you are wearing a watch and seeing the results of a run, I guarantee it is influencing your self-perception and sense of efficacy, success. Sometimes for good, sometimes for ill. But the point is, there's no way it's not influencing that, because as soon as I see the pace numbers or similar metrics, what I'm doing is I'm evaluating whether the run was a success by that. Well, it was an easy run, but if my easy run's a little faster today than it was last week, then I feel like that's successful, right? But it shouldn't be linearly faster. Like when you get fitter, your easy runs just aren't by default faster all the time. There's so many other things that contribute to that. Stop letting your watch rule your heart. This is a better world. Rather, there is a better world possible here. And I'm convinced it begins with leaving the watch behind for training runs. I am absolutely convinced of that. And I know a lot of you are like, Zach, stop. and you might think that. You might feel that way. But I can say one thing with absolute confidence, which is to say that the watch, without the watch, I can be better at the thing of running as a runner. I don't mean me personally. I mean anyone. Without the watch, I can be better at the thing of running. Not ready for that yet? At a minimum, find a way to diminish the influence the watch has over your decision making and your self-perception. So this sometimes is like, don't look at your data after every single run because some of them just really don't matter at all. And many of them should not be benchmarks of success at all. There are certain runs that maybe you could say, well, this is one that I'm paying attention to for this reason at this time, and that's why I'm doing it. Okay, we can compromise a bit for now. And then lastly, impulses, right? Remember to filter your impulses through long-term thinking. That's the most important reminder here with our patience value, our patience rule. What's my big goal? What's the impulse move? Will this impulse move support my big goal or harm it? If I do this today, what am I not doing tomorrow as a result? That's actually a Michael Bungay Stanier approach to things. If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? Because by nature of the thing, you can't do the thing you want most every single day all the time unless it just conveniently aligns with the thing you should do, which is unlikely. So if I am going to make the choice to do this today, what does that mean I am not doing tomorrow? And that's a good caveat to consider. So all in all, patience is, let's go back to our definition. Patience is the willingness to accept a current undesirable state while working actively toward a future more desirable state. Patience is using our imagination to envision a future that is different than the present, to understand how our past activities got us to this current undesirable present, and then to understand how our current activities will help us produce that desirable future. That's what it means to be patient. That's the process of patience, according to AtoZrunning, and plenty of other people say similar things. And what it comes down to is if we can master this rule, if we can get to the point where we are naturally thinking along these kinds of lines with our decision making, we are going to be well on our way to realizing our dreams as runners. And we've got a lot more to say about how to do that with our other 8 rules, but we'll end, at least for now, with rule number 1, be patient. And now we've got to talk about the latest news from the world of running because it's just so exciting all the time. And we always got to start that segment by sharing some updates from our AtoZrunning group. These are the athletes that we here at AtoZrunning coach and support. And they're always doing amazing things. It's just, and I know that's somewhat kind of like self-serving. But no, we love to celebrate the successes and the efforts that these runners are putting in, and they're doing some serious work, and we're always hopeful that they're seeing the benefits of it. So let's talk about the Hungry Duck Half Marathon, where Robert was second in his age group. Congrats, Robert. The Cornhusker Hustle 5K, where Elijah finished second overall. Nice job. And then at the Magic of the Mile event, which I mentioned earlier, I was able to run also, which was a lot of fun. CJ finished third, only a few seconds off his personal best as well. Mike ran in the elite heat. Violet finished third as well in the elite heat for the women in a new personal best time. Congrats, Violet. Very exciting. Lorenda ran a new personal best. Martha missed her personal best by only a handful of seconds. And they actually ran together, Lorenda and Martha. It was a lot of fun to be able to cheer for them as they were both pursuing on track for personal best, or very nearly. It was exciting. Craig also ran as well. And so we had a big old crew running the mile that day. Lots of fun. Congrats. Now, let's talk about Monaco Diamond League. This meet is always spectacular. I've been using that word a lot today because it's a great word. Monaco Diamond League is one of the benchmarks for the year where it's like, are people ready for championship racing? And they're going to show up at Monaco and they're going to showcase that readiness. Not to say that things can't still change, because this year World Championships are in September. And so we've actually got a lot of time. Usually they're about 4 weeks after the Monaco Diamond League, in fact, but this time a little more, which is okay. we have a series of events here similar to what we do with Diamond Leagues where it's just kind of a smattering, but there's always something unique, it seems, in Monaco. And this time it was the women's 1,000 meters. So now you get a nice kind of fun blend of the milers and the half milers intersecting in the 1,000 meter. Oftentimes it favors the half milers, you could say, because it's only a tiny bit longer than an 800 meter. But in reality, the milers tend to be quite competent at the distance. Remember last year's obscure event was the 2,000 meters, and Jessica Hull broke the world record. That was awesome. Well, this time they were going for a world record again in the 1,000, but this is a very elusive record. Faith Kipyegon has attempted it multiple times. Faith Kipyegon, world record holder in the 1,500, and also amazing. She has been within a second of the world record 3 separate times, within a quarter of a second 2 separate times, most recently this past April. So Faith Kipyegon, one of the greatest middle distance runners of all time, beyond a doubt, has struggled with this record. So you got to ask yourself, is it possible for the record to fall when she is not in this race? Well, Jessica Hull's a world record holder, and there's other great talents. So maybe hold out hope. They still went after it, that's for sure. Leading the charge, unsurprisingly, was Hull. If we've learned anything about her in the last few years, it is that she is unafraid. Just goes after it and often pays off, like her silver medal in the Paris Olympics. Unfortunately, the world record pace was a little much for the field this time. And so Hull's efforts still benefited quite a few, but not to the world record. Nelly Chepchirchir of Kenya most benefited of all because she had the strongest finish and took the victory in 2:29.77. That's significant because the world record is 2:28 high and change. And so she was about a second off. This is world number 4 all time. But since Faith Kipyegon is world number 2, it was not a national record, as it were, because they're both Kenyan. However, USA's Addie Wiley was the biggest surprise in the race. She tends to be fire or ice, and this was a fire day for Wiley, and so she finished in second place, ran a world all-time number 8 performance, and a new U.S. and North American record, 2:30.71. Hull then finished in third, but received another Australian and Oceania record for her efforts when she ran 2:30.96. And it should be noted that Wiley took that U.S. record from Sinclair Johnson, who also happened to be in the race and also bested her previous record. She finished in fourth. So 2 Americans ran faster than the previous American record, which is very exciting, certainly significant times. And then it was Halima Nakai of Uganda, who also ran a national record when she ran 2:31.67, new Ugandan record. How about the men's 800 meters? Here's a crazy statistic for you. All 8 of the Paris Olympics finalists were in this race. So the 8 800-meter Paris Olympic finalists from last summer were all back together running this race. I think it's the first time that I know of that this has ever happened. An entire Olympic final raced again, the exact same people against each other, plus a few, which matters. In case you forgot, here's the results of that Paris Olympics 800 meter. Emmanuel Wanyonyi of Kenya won the race. Marco Arap, Canada, was silver. Jamel Sajadi of Algeria was bronze. Then we had Bryce Hoppel, USA. Mohamed Ataoui of Spain. Gabriel Tual of France. Shapiso Masalela of Botswana. And Max Bergen of Great Britain. It was like a tour of the world in this Olympic final. We loved it. We commented on it last year. What a race. You've got 8 people from 8 different countries in an Olympic final. That's like what Olympics is all about, right? And it was Wanyonyi was the best of the group that day, and everything else was terribly exciting. It was a super duper fast race. Olympic record is the world record, so it was not an Olympic record, but it was like the second fastest ever Olympic performance, and only a third of a second off the world record. Not even. So anyway, that was last year's Olympics. Now, we've got the same group, those 8, plus some serious studs added to the mix. Don't forget about USA's Josh Hoey, who's crushing it this year. Incredible stuff. He's now in this race in Monaco. And then Slimane Moula of Algeria and Peter Bowl of Australia, also incredible 800-meter runners and all in this race. So what a race indeed. 11 of the fastest 800-meter runners ever. Great performances all around. Had the flavor of a World Championships preview. No doubt about it. But, it's still a while, so we'll see. How did it go down? It was fast. And once more, it was the Emmanuel Wanyonyi show. That dude is so hard to beat. When he is on, he is game. Wanyonyi is fearless when it comes to racing. He just goes all out every time. Like you gotta be better than me to beat me is the message every single time he races. But who pushed him to the line this time? None other than USA's Josh Hoey, who is just having the season of dreams, the year of dreams. And this is just a continuation of it. But Wanyonyi did have a cushion. And so he did run the Monaco Diamond League record, the Monaco meeting record, the world leading time for the year. He ran 1:41:44. It was crazy. And Hoey was chasing him down, but then Wanyonyi had the extra in the last 100, so Hoey had to settle for a personal best, 1:42:01, which is incredible. And then it was Jamal Sajadi in third. Sajadi has the craziest last 100 meters of any half-miler on the planet. Just always gaining ground. But he's almost always so far back that he has too much ground to gain. And so that was the situation here. He was moving, but just too far back. Peter Bowl in fourth ran an Australian and Oceania record, 1:42:55. Marco Arap made his Diamond League debut, but he was only in fifth. And then a fun fact, the top 9 performers in terms of Diamond League ranking are all in this race as well. So the 9 highest ranked Diamond League circuit performers right there. That's cool stuff. So some records, some exciting times. Josh Hoey, he just keeps getting better. Well, where's it going to end? Where is it going to end? I don't know. How about the men's 5,000? Another aggressive and bold race. The 5,000 has been terribly exciting this year. But this one didn't pan out. It was not as fast at the end. Pacing was set for 12:40, which is blazing, but it was clear early on that we weren't going to see a crowd running that pace. But who do you think did attempt it? Yamif Kejelcha of Ethiopia. He does it every time. He goes after it no matter what. I would call him an optimistic runner. He's always going after it. But the story within the story actually was Jimmy Gressier of France making a run for the French record or even the European record, which I think Almgren just broke that recently. And yet Gressier, with a bit of a home crowd experience, Monaco is, of course, its own individual principality, but it is essentially in France, and so a big French crowd. And, it wasn't in the cards this time. But Gressier did still finish second. And we've been so blessed with incredible races lately that this one kind of felt anticlimactic, but it was still some exceptional running because you've got even Mohamed Abdullahi of Germany with a new national record, 12:53. 2 Frenchmen under 13 minutes, the likes of Etienne Daguinon joining Gressier. And so just really, really good stuff. Lots of fun racing. Not quite as fast as it's been lately. Men's steeplechase rounded out the meet, and it was an interesting race. So once again, you have Soufiane El Bakali, the Moroccan steeple stud who wins it all, and showing again that he's putting it on the show until suddenly he wasn't. And who's the challenger late in the game here? Japan's Ryuji Miura, who you would be surprised if you weren't paying close attention. Miura's been really incredible rate of improvement lately. He's got the national record already for Japan, but his last lap was insane. He was kicking like a demon and caught El Bakali over the final barrier. El Bakali had a huge lead. Caught him over the final barrier, but he had been working so hard to that point. El Bakali had just a little extra for the last 50 meters. The last barrier is in the home straightaway, so 50 meters to go. El Bakali had just a little bit, just enough to hold him off, and this dude is hard to beat. That's just all there is to it. Miura had to run another Japanese record, 8:03:43, and still couldn't take the victory from El Bakali. And behind those two, a whole bunch of personal bests, including Edmund Serum of Kenya, who is definitely a threat as the season gets longer and longer, and Matthew Wilkinson of United States. He was the surprise Olympian, you recall, last year, finishing second at the U.S. Olympic trials. He ran a personal best time as well. So we got some fast running, no doubt about it. Well, there's a lot of other things we could talk about, but I think we're right about at our time for today. We'll have more to share with you next time around, and with Andy back with us, we'll be able to share some AI trivia and let you know what the end result is if we reach a current round winner. Remember, you got to play the AI trivia with us also to find out how you score and rank against Zach and Andy. But that's it for now. You can find us on Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. So we're sharing various content in addition to the podcast, which is regular. We're going to keep that format that we have found to be the most successful over the years. And so you'll hear every week a topic that is helpful to runners, something that hopefully is informative, encouraging, or inspiring. And we'll throw some running news, what's the latest going on in the world of running, the back end of that. And you've got yourself a great experience all the way through. So we hope. If you're looking to make a change in your own running efforts, check out our coaching services at AtoZrunning.com/coaching. Or you can just look for the word coaching at the top. Thanks for joining us this time. We will talk to you again next week.